Hello, City Skylines fans. I'm Sockside Up, and welcome back to another episode of Lake Sockside. We are on episode number 17. We are looking at today's project. We're going to be redoing most of the highway system in the entire city, the entire county. It's been far too long where I've wanted to improve the way the highway looks. When I look at this city, that's the weakest point to me. Personally, I haven't been a fan of the high rise. I kind of used it as a easy way to get the highway system going and set up, and today we're finally taking a step back. I was really looking at the city overall when I started recording this episode. My plans were to add a small farm town. We're gonna get to that later. I was just overlooking the city and looking at things I liked, things I didn't like. We're gonna spend a couple episodes going back through the entire city and kind of bringing it up to a place where I think I want it. I'm not happy with the current state of it, so we're gonna get it there and then we'll keep moving forward. We'll add new things along the way as well, but that shouldn't be too much of a detour for this series. Enough of the ramble. You can see we are working on a sunken highway. I looked at a few videos, took some advice from some other YouTubers, and decided to go and tackle it for myself for the first time. I've always avoided it because I felt like it was too much work and there was a lot of time spent on this build. Honestly, I was extremely exhausted. My wrist was hurting from using the mouse so long. Whew. This is a big build. So the idea I had here was to keep the highway really, or the two directions really close to each other so there's not much of a gap. A lot of freeways I've been on, at least in the inner cities, they don't waste a lot of space. They have the lanes next to each other and some barriers separating the two. Some of them do have large landscaped areas that separate the two sides. We decided to go with a really tightly close freeway system here, mostly for this downtown area, and then later on you will see how we separate that later on into the more rural areas or the less dense areas. I'm excited about it. It's going to take a few episodes, like I said, to get it going, but here we're starting to get to where we're working on just upgrading. I get upgrading or downgrading, I guess, since they're sunken, but you know, we're upgrading all of these to a different road type as well that I think looks nicer overall than the vanilla highways that we were using. Overall, I think this is the best thing we could do for Lake Sockside. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't happy with the way it was going. I was getting a little burnt out with it, and I took a step back and figured out why. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna keep moving pretty rapidly from now on. Well, you're witnessing my first ever custom interchange that I'm doing between two freeway systems, or two freeways, two highways. These are some of the corners we usually cut where we find assets on the workshop or just use vanilla interchanges, but we're not doing that today. I love the way it turned out. There's still a little bit of detailing and a little bit of adjustments that I need to do. We'll talk about that later on at the end of the episode of some of the things that still need to be done after this build. A lot of learning that I'm doing as I'm trying to make these cool YouTube videos, but also I'm learning things about the game and how to improve the way I'm building cities and detailing cities. And it's an adventure. I'm glad you guys are on the ride with me. But you can see here we're doing what turns out to be a scissor interchange, and I like the way it looks. I think it fits good. It doesn't take away from the rest of the city, and that's really what I was going for. I wanted to have a nice interchange that was for a functional interchange, and not necessarily, you know, something that was a main feature of the city. At least that's the way I look at it in my head, but it also turned out really nice, and you'll see in some of the time lapses or the cinematics later on that it does stand out pretty well in its own way, and it changes the city dramatically. Again, I couldn't be more happy with it. Definitely stick it out or jump forward to the before and after cinematics that we put at the end of this episode. It's a dramatic change for the better, in my opinion, like I said. But here you can see we're getting these first sides, so first side of the interchange done, I guess the scissor part, and then the handle part's what we're doing here. Using the toolkit, I'm starting to understand how to use this mod and improving the transitions between roads. I'm starting to love it. I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'll get a little bit better at it and do some more tutorials and walk through those other YouTube videos that are out there so I can keep making some good road transitions. And again, some of these tools are amazing. These mod creators are very, very impressive. Here we start adding the barrier part of the sunken highway. I wanted to have a nice separation between the city and the highway with a barrier like we've seen in a lot of other sunken highway videos that are out there. Wanted to put my own spin on it. I did want to have a nice gap between the road and the barrier so where we could do some detailing. I ended up getting kind of mad at the way the terrain was handling it, and I didn't have the right tools to pull it off. So I decided to adjust it. You'll see some of the struggles and then the adjustment that we do make. And then I was also having a problem with lining up the gap on each side and making it symmetrical because my brain wanted it very symmetrical. Again, we play around with the terrain like this for a little bit, try to flatten it out and get it looking nice as possible. Some of the things that I really struggled with in this build was what to do with this barrier around the off ramps. Yeah, let me know what you think. I ended up going with something that I felt looked okay. Wasn't 100% happy with it. Again, there might be some adjustments to do off camera. We'll show next episode. Again, overall, it looks amazing. It looks a million times better. Here we started to use some of these highway barriers to kind of use as to make it look more finished. And I would have left these in here if we would have done the gap in between the highway and the barrier, but we ended up adjusting that in a few minutes. I just kind of wanted to still show the entire process of, because I think it does show how I think and how we're slowly coming up with the final product. But yeah, you can see more struggles with terrain. But here's some of those highway exits that I was talking about. I tried to make it look as nice as possible and then do some detailing in here because these are some of the areas where we couldn't get it close enough to the highway because the ramps were in the way. Ended up looking nice. I love the way these trees blend with the trees that are on the quay that we're using to as a highway barrier. I guess I should have mentioned that. I will put a link in the description for this asset. It's a beautiful looking one. I actually temporarily put it on the waterfront to see what it looked like. We're not going to do that long term, but I just wanted to see for fun. I think this also helps for function here. We have some residential housing right up on the highway, and now we have a barrier wall that potentially is going to block some of that noise for the residents. I think it's a good move overall here. And some of the detailing that we're doing, I wanted to make it look like these were naturally there to begin with, and we built the highway around it. We've talked about that a lot in my series, trying to make it look like nature is still intact when we are demolishing it with buildings and freeways and things that we're adding to these cities. But here we go. We start finding a little bit of a cadence on adding these barriers. As you'll see, we'll start moving a little bit quicker once we finally give up on the terrain here, and it should happen pretty soon. It was a little bit of a struggle, I've mentioned a few times, and we had to play with the daylight a lot to get the right angle to see what we were detailing to try to get rid of that terrain. One of the things I did realize was those roads were too close, and that was what was really messing with it, because then I started to use the terraforming tools even with the barrier gone, and I couldn't get it the way I wanted to. And that's when my brain finally remembered those roads are actually causing the issues that I'm having with the terrain. So, you know, we just tighten it up and it ends up looking great. I keep repeating myself, but we'll get to that point in the video here pretty quick. Here's our first look at a section that I'm happy with. You get the picture now. What a difference. What a difference it makes. There'll be a before and after cinematic coming up here later on at the end of the episode, but it makes a huge difference. Just looking at these two areas right here with that gap, tightening this up closer to the freeway looks gorgeous. This quay is the perfect asset for this, in my opinion. It's not as functional as I want. There's other mods that I need to add to allow people to walk on them. I don't know how close you'd want to walk to the highway like that. Maybe you do. There is a wall there or a fence there that would prevent people from falling onto the highway. So it looks functional. Those benches are sweet. We keep plugging along, and it allows these roads. You can start seeing it. It actually allows the roads that overpass the highway to look more natural. and it makes the highway look like it's an addition to the city instead of the reason why the city was built, like I felt like it was before. Even some of the skyline I felt was ruined by the highway being a high-rise highway, or a elevated, that's the word I'm looking for, an elevated highway. This looks way better sunken down. It feels more natural. It just seems to fit the theme of the city to me better. And you'll see in the cinematics, it's coming along a lot better. And once we got down to the final product, what we wanted it to look like, it was a lot of rinse and repeat with Move It, just kind of getting all of these things into place. I'll let you enjoy a little bit more of this time lapse and check in on you in a bit. I debated adding this part into the video, but we're going to do it. We're going to show you kind of how I'm thinking of transitioning between the downtown area highway that is sunken and then this other area that's more rural. It's not as high dense. So having the highway road level doesn't really get in the way like it does in the downtown area. So here we're also using the toolkit to quickly make these roads. I end up making the bend look a little bit smoother in those, but it's okay. And here we're showing another different style of a highway exit that we're going to do in the city as well, where this one, the road actually goes above and gets elevated to go above the highway instead of building it underneath the highway or elevating the highway. So we are going to add a little bit of a blend of different types of freeway exits and on-ramps to make it more unique across the whole city to, I don't know, give it a good feel, in my opinion. But this area here is temporary just to get the city up and running and get cars driving in it, because I wanted to see how the cars reacted to the changes. We broke a lot of the highway, a lot of the freeway to get it going. So you can see these connections aren't very pretty. But that's the point right there at that little river where I think we're happy with. Everything beyond the river we're gonna have to do. I'll probably do that off camera. We won't do another episode of just highway building. But I'll update you at least in some live plays and cinematics and stuff. So you'll get the feel of how it turned out. But overall, I really like the way it looks. You can see there's some detailing there that we still have to finish. We'll get it done. It was a lot of an effort, and I was getting exhausted and found a good stopping place in my opinion. But here, I just stared at the traffic for a while. I love the way it was working in this new freeway system, and I just wanted to make sure everything was working. You can see some of the roads didn't have cars coming on them, so we had some directions broken on the highway for a little while. It actually caused a lot of people to leave the city because they couldn't get the dead bodies picked up. My goodness, I had to run the game for a while for it to recover, but we're good, we're there. Here's some of the learning I still have to do. Another thing that I left in this video was my attempt to start using the marking tool. You can probably notice we don't use it very often in this series. I'm gonna want to change that. This was one of my first efforts and I struggled. I'm gonna go back, watch some of those videos I've watched in the past, get some more tips and get better at it. I might even end up changing the highway roads that we use because of it to get some that play better with it. I don't like the angles that we're seeing here. Again, I wanted to leave this in here just to kind of show my struggles, and yeah, we're getting there and learning. And if anybody has a good video to point me to, I definitely want to check it out, and gonna do some practice with the marking tool and get better at that for the next upcoming finalizations, I guess, of the city as we move on with Lake Sockside. Well, I think my key takeaway today is to not settle. Don't be satisfied with subpar or a city that you're not excited about building, and make those changes that are making you unhappy, and redo them. You can see, I think it makes a dramatic difference. Let me know what you think. The buildings pop a little bit more, and also we're going to remove some of these vanilla buildings and get some more custom commercial buildings added to the city and improve this view as well. This stretch of the city I want to be really the trademark of Lake Sockside, at least this town. we're going to do a lot more improvements on that in the next upcoming episodes. Maybe some of it will be off camera and we'll just show it and talk about it, but we definitely want to keep pushing the limit and improving this city. And I want to thank you for joining. I had a blast making this episode. I got a little exhausted, but as always, I'm Sockside up, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Lake Sockside.